Hi, this is James Garber, October Live here for a book review. Today's book I'll be reviewing today, Chainsaw Terror by Shaun Hutson under the pseudonym Nick Blake. This was published by Star in 1984. This is one of the rarest books that I own out of my collection. I have a few others, but this is one of the rarest. And look at this beautiful, gorgeous cover art. Just look at that. That is just sick. I was lucky enough to get this book from Amazon. I first discovered this book through my friend Leon from Paperback Maniac. Who did a review of this. His review piqued my interest about this book, and chainsaws are one of my favorite power tools, especially when they're used for the incorrect reasons. So it's like, I gotta check this book out because it sounds awesome. And unfortunately, this book is out of print, so getting a copy was not easy. But then this was a few years ago, back in December. It wasn't on Christmas, but I consider it like a Christmas miracle. So I went to Amazon one day to see if if this book was for sale, as there was copies going for like $300-$400, and there was one going for $600 at the time. Then one day on December, I saw a copy of Chains of Terror for $90, and I immediately jumped on that before anyone else did. And then with tax and shipping fees, it only came to $94. So it was like it was an excellent deal to get. And when I got the book, I just read through it, and I was like, wow, this book is amazing. And as I'll explain in my review why it is amazing, why this book needs to come back in print, why this book needs to come back. Alright, on to the book review. Plot. Ralph Briggs, father of two children, Edward and Maureen, along with his wife Shelley, works as a professional carpenter as he makes good money but spends hardly any time with his children or wife and is obsessed with making his house soundproof, along with spending time alone in the basement. After a long shift, Ralph goes upstairs to find his wife is packing her stuff up and leaving him. The two get into an argument which quickly turns into a fight, with Ralph losing his temper and brutally murders his wife by stabbing her repeatedly with a broken shard of glass. Exhausted along with feeling guilt, Ralph slits his own throat, then kisses his wife as he dies beside her. Unknown to them, Edward was silently watching them. After he sees their dead bodies, Edward runs downstairs, calls the police. When his sister Maureen returns home, she finds her brother sitting on the steps. Edward tells her what happened just as the sirens are racing towards their house. Maureen rushes inside to find her parents are dead and goes into shock. It is now 1983. Edward has taken over his father's carpenter business since it was the only job he could get. For 5 years he's been doing well and has added new customers to his list, but the events of his parents' death have affected him badly. His sister barely recovered from it. But Edward is secretly obsessed with Maureen and dislikes women, as most always flirt with him, as it's beginning to irritate him. When Maureen returns back from work, she is becoming more worried about Edward, as living with him is uneasy at times. It feels like a prisoner in her own home. She plans on leaving Edward to move with her boyfriend at work. Unknown to her, Edward has made a peephole and spies on his sister while she takes a bath the following day. The next day, Maureen can't stand living with Edward anymore and agrees to move in with her boyfriend, Michael Ramsey, in his flat. But after a night of sex, Maureen tells Ramsey she's going to tell her brother that she's moving out. Ramsey tries to convince her to stay, but states she has to tell him. When Maureen returns back to the house, it's dark inside and is frightened when Edward appears out of the darkness and corners her into the kitchen. Edward is furious when Maureen is not only leaving him, but angered that she had sex with another man, as Edward wants her. She tries to escape, but Edward grabs a meat cleaver, striking it down into her shoulder. Maureen grabs a knife and stabs it into Edward's nose. He throws her across the kitchen and chops off her hand, still holding the knife, then dismembers her head while making a bloody mess in the kitchen. Edward cleans up the mess, wraps up Maureen's body in plastic, then puts his sister's head into her parents' room, then locks the door, ensuring her that she'll never leave him. When Maureen fails to show up for work, Ramsey tries calling her house several times but gets no answer. After work, Ramsey drives to Maureen's house, but as he approaches it, he gets a very uneasy feeling about it. Ramsey knocks on the door and is greeted by Edward. He allows him inside and already is getting bad vibes from him, as he's much taller than him, along with his creepy grin. When Edward takes Ramsey into a locked room where Maureen is, Ramsey is horrified to find his girlfriend's head lying on the bed. Before he can react, Edward drives a hammer into his head, shattering his skull, then stabbing him in the arm with the claw, dragging him a bit before ramming the claw end into Ramsey's skull. He carries him downstairs into the cellar, stripping both himself and Ramsey naked. Edward grabs his chainsaw and dismembers Ramsey, slicing through his stomach, causing guts and blood to splatter over himself and his workbench, then rips apart his chest. Edward grins at his handiwork while feeling the hardest erection he's ever had. Feeling his bloodlust growing stronger, Edward leaves his house and travels to London in search for a hooker to kill. While searching around the many adult places, live sex shows, and adult bookstores, he finds a hooker, Penny, leaning on the hood of his car. He offers Penny a lot of money to come to his place, which she accepts. However, watching her is another hooker, Amy, watches as she finds it odd seeing Penny getting into a John's car, as she's never done that before. When Edward brings Penny back to his place, he fails to get it on with Penny. She asks Edward if he would like to watch her get it on with his sister, which he agrees, and takes Penny to the locked up room. There, Penny is horrified to find a severed head lying on the bed. Penny tries to escape, but Edward knocks her to the floor, badly injuring her, then carries her into the cellar. When Penny awakens, she finds herself tied up to the workbench. Then Edward appears out of the darkness, fully naked and holding his chainsaw. Penny screams in horror as Edward dismembers her from the waist all the way up to her chest. He grins while covering himself in her blood along with his workplace. After he finishes, he disposes of Penny's remains and cleans up the mess. Vicky, a hooker, has lost two friends and believes that they are victims of a serial killer who's stalking women on the streets. She turns to her boyfriend Todd, a journalist, for help, but states they can't go to the police unless they have proof that Edward is the killer. Todd comes up with a plan, but it's risky. Vicky must go as bait with Todd to follow them and prove that he's the killer. But will Todd be able to stop Edward from claiming another victim, or will they both end up sliced and diced by a chainsaw? Chainsaw Terror is a short yet brutal novel, very gory with heavily detailed scenes of victims being dismembered. High amounts of blood, organs, and body parts paint a very dark yet colorful imagery within the pages, along with the detailed scenes of London's gritty, filthy streets to Edward's house of horror. Characters are simple yet well crafted, as Shaun Hutson doesn't add any unwanted filler nor drag on with scenes. He gets to the point of the story and doesn't waste any time with it. Edward Briggs is one mean and brutal killer, showing no remorse for the people he kills, along with his twisted views on dominating and slaughtering women, along with anyone that gets in his way. He's the kind of killer you would dream of seeing in a slasher film. Which this novel is like a slasher film if Texas Chainsaw Massacre had the balls to show how brutal and gory chainsaw dismemberment could really be while shown in graphic detail. My only complaint is the novel is too short, as I felt so much more carnage and mayhem could have gone further if Shaun Hutson wrote more to the story. However, he did plan to write two sequels, what would have been his Chainsaw series, with Chainsaw Slaughter and Chainsaw Bloodbath being the next two novels. Unfortunately, the Nasties, UK's Board of Censors, had the novel removed from publication because they claimed the word chainsaw was harmful to the public. They released the novel, but with a heavily edited version titled Come By Night, which removes all the gore along with toning down the violence. Shaun Hutson hated this new version of his novel as it hindered its success. Thanks a lot for nothing, assholes. I hope one day Shaun will bring Chainsaw Terror back into print, as it's a very difficult novel to come by, and even reboot his planned Chainsaw series, as there isn't enough horror out there with everyone's favorite power tool. Overall, I highly recommend Chainsaw Terror. If you're a big fan of 80s slasher films, then this novel is just for you. Oh boy, it was such a blast to read Chainsaw Terror again, man. I was having so much fun reading it last night. As I said, it's a very short book. It's actually 173 pages, not 177 like I said in a previous video. But man, it was so much fun reading this book again. I was just, as I was reading this, I thought, could you imagine if this book could have been made into a slasher film back in the 80s? Just imagine how awesome this would have been. I can imagine like Tom Savini like working on the special effects and the gore. It would just been sick. I don't know who would have been who should direct it if this was made to a film, but you need someone like really good to pull this off. And a little backstory on this book, Chainsaw Terror here. As I said, it was going to be originally part of a series, but before that, the publisher Star was trying to get the rights to Texas Chainsaw Massacre to do a novelization of it, and they were having trouble getting the rights to it. So Shaun Hutson offered an idea, stating it would be cheaper to write our own like horror novel with a chainsaw. So they said, okay, do that. And Shaun Hutson, I found an article on the internet of an interview of him talking about this book, which I'll leave a link in the description so people can read this. So after the publisher couldn't get the rights, he offered to write his own chainsaw horror book, which the publisher said, okay, go for it. So he planned this horror series with the killer using a chainsaw as the main murder weapon. And so this is the first book, Chainsaw Terror. So the other books, which would have been his Chainsaw series, would have been Chainsaw Slaughter and Chainsaw Bloodbath. Those are just sick titles, and man, I could just imagine the gorgeous cover artwork that would have graced those covers of those novels. But unfortunately, thanks to the stupid nasties, they pulled the book like I think it was like 1 month or I can't remember what he said on the interview, but he states like after like what was it, maybe a month or even a week after this book had been published, they took it off because they claimed the word chainsaw was harmful and offensive to the public, and then came out with this piece of shit, heavily watered down version, Come by Night, which takes all the gore and violence out. And he was really pissed off about that, as it really not only hindered the Chainsaw series, it essentially ruined it, but it kind of hindered his career a little bit, and it just pisses me off. It's like, why did they have to pull this book out of publication? Like, I don't get it. It just the nasties are to me are a bunch of assholes. That are just so uptight with what horror films and novels are allowed and not allowed, and then all these years they hold them off, and then it's like till like years later when they finally allow it, it's like, what's the big fuss? Like, I don't get it. It's really weird how I find it odd. Like, in Europe and stuff, they're like they're not so fussy with nudity and violence and stuff when it's from their own countries. Yet if it's from outside the countries, they get really fussy about it. I don't get it. It's stupid, but oh man, Shaun Hutson, if you ever see this video, please, please bring back Chainsaw Terror back into print. It's a great book. It really, like, if this book was reprinted today, people will go nuts for it. And even bring back even reboot your Chainsaw series. That would be great to see that too. Like, you don't have to modernize. You can just keep in the 80s like you had planned. But oh man, just if you see this video, Shaun Hutson, please bring this book back, man. Every time I tell people about this book, it's like, oh, I really like to read it. And it's like impossible to get a copy now. Amazon no longer has a copy of it. I looked up on eBay, nothing. You can't get this book anywhere. So Shaun, if you ever see this video as a fan of yours, please bring this book back, man. It would be great to bring this horror classic back into print, along with the Chainsaw series. Alright, that is the review today. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be reading Razorback next, and I already got my next horror book selected, which I'll show at the end when I go through the other two books, along with my next planned books I'll be reading as well. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to October Library, the YouTube channel, and the Facebook group, the same name, a place you can post, share, and review fiction. Until then, I'll catch you later.